Okay, good evening, Democrats. Well, you're all muted, but maybe, okay. Yeah, we go like this or something. Good evening, Democrats. Okay, there we go. I see them all. Okay, good. Welcome to our biannual endorsement meeting. I'm so thrilled to have everybody here. And in fact, my first Democratic Club meeting, the Santa Monica Democratic Club, was 10 years ago at this very event in 2010 for the city council debate. And at that debate, I saw a lot of people who I know are here tonight. It was when I first met Kevin McEwen. It was when I first met a lot of folks who are here with us tonight. And I can only hope that the next president of the Santa Monica Democratic Club is out there, one of the 91 who's watching right now, and maybe you'll be inspired by what you see here tonight. I've muted everybody, but you should have the ability to unmute. But we ask that you please respect the fact that we're doing a program, and especially during the debate portion, not to interrupt. Tonight, we're going to host debates for Santa Monica City Council, the Santa Monica College Board of Trustees, an LA Superior Court seat, and 3 ballot measures. The second half of our endorsement votes will happen next week. We'll be considering the Santa Monica Malibu School District Board of Education, the Rent Control Board, and the rest of the ballot measures that we don't cover tonight. Before we get started, I have one announcement. It's very good news. Last night, the City Council appointed 2 members of our club to city commissions, both of whom are from the newly formed Diversity and Inclusion Committee of our club, which we will hear from next week. I want to congratulate our members, Erica Leslie, who was appointed to the Downtown Santa Monica Inc. Board, and Ms. Angela Scott, who was appointed to the Arts Commission. And we're so glad to have that representation, and we really look forward to working with them in that capacity, and even more so on our Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And next week during the voting period, you'll be hearing a presentation from that committee. It's going to be really exciting. The voting tonight is going to take place at the end of the meeting around 9 p.m. after the debating is concluded. And last time around, there was some concern that some people were filling in their ballots before the debates were done. So just wanted to let everyone know that we're going to see the forums, the debates, discussions. Around 9 o'clock, you will receive a ballot at the same email address that you received for this meeting. And you should have gotten an email from me earlier this evening that said, you are confirmed to be a good member in good standing and will receive a ballot. So as long as you receive that, you're going to get the vote later on. We're using software called Election Buddy, which was also used at Santa Monicans for Renters' Rights. And we're using the best practices from a lot of different Democratic clubs and organizations to make sure that this process of endorsement goes as smoothly as possible. Of course, only registered members in good standing are going to receive a ballot. So there's lots of people here who are welcome to attend. You just won't be able to vote in the election unless you are a member. We've got a lot to get to tonight, so we're going to hold the rest of the announcements and other items that we usually do at the beginning are now going to be at the end. And we're now going to start with our first candidate forum, which is for LA Superior Court, office number 72. For this forum, we heard from 3 candidates during the primary, and we're now down to 2 candidates. The board has not made a recommendation for this race. So we're going to hear from each candidate for 2 minutes each. And then after that 2 minutes, they'll have 1 minute each to follow up. And then we'll move on to the next race. And we'll begin with Mayana Dillinger. Mayana?
John, please repeat the amount of time. How long?
It'll be 2 minutes.
2 minutes each?
And Peter's our timekeeper this evening.
2 minutes each, you said?
Yep. Okay.
2 minutes, Peter, followed by 1 minute of rebuttal, or not rebuttal, but further speaking.
Right. Okay, Mayana, begin.
Okay, hey, Thanks very much for inviting me to be here tonight, folks. And I also submitted some materials for your perusal that should be in your system. Remember the early summer vandalism in Santa Monica? How could we forget? That was a protest against ineffective power systems and established power systems. And that includes, I had to say, district attorneys. District attorneys are not the solution, they're the problem in all of this. We need some better sustained law and order for the long term. I'm independent, I'm supported by large organizations wanting to see good lasting change from the bottom up, and I'm not an ineffective establishment candidate, so to speak. I have support from a lot of different democratic clubs. I'm sorry I didn't buy any memberships tonight or anytime else. You could see all my endorsements, of course, online at dellingerforjudge.com. I'm also supported by a large number of scientists, attorneys, environmental organizations, and others. You could again see that online. I'm the most highly qualified candidate for this office because I trained with state and federal level trial and appellate court judges behind the scenes, giving me hands-on experience, ready to step into that role. I worked on thousands of hours and hundreds of cases in that function. And now as a law professor, I demonstrate to aspiring attorneys how to think about the law on my feet in front of often the highly critical audience that they are. And they're very successful attorneys now because of my training. All of this is directly relevant experience to being a judge. I have hundreds of citations to my writings. I just won the Best Legal Article of the Year award in 2020 for climate change and corporate liability issues. So, judges analyze and read and analyze the law and write about it and deal with people. And I have done that for over a decade and I'm very experienced at doing that. I'm diverse. I'm an immigrant, I'm female, I come from a blue-collar background, I'm multilingual. I resemble what Santa Monica and Los Angeles County really truly looks like and what it'll look like in the future. So again, you should vote for me because I'm demonstrably, as you can see from my writings online, and that you got the best candidate.
Thank you, time is up.
Okay, thank you, Mayana. And now we'll go to Steve Morgan.
Hey, good evening, everybody. So I'm actually originally from just outside of Baltimore myself. My mother's a retired Baltimore City school teacher. I'm a lifelong Democrat. While in college, I interned for Congressman, now Senator Benjamin Cardin. For those of you that are originally from Maryland, you're familiar with Senator Cardin. I also interned for the Public Defender's Office while I was in college. I would go in and interview folks every day. After I graduated, I went to work for Habitat for Humanity in Hawaii, where I helped build low-income housing for low-income Native Hawaiians. I went to law school at the University of Hawaii. After I graduated from the University of Hawaii, I went into criminal defense work. And I think I'm one of only maybe 2 out of 26 candidates this entire cycle who has criminal defense experience. I was a criminal defense attorney in Chicago. In private practice, as an example of a case that I had, or 2 cases, I represented an immigrant from Africa who was a CPA in Africa, but who wasn't able to practice that, unfortunately, when he came to the States, was a taxi driver. He lived in a condominium building where a detective from Chicago PD moved in. He was coming upstairs, my client, was coming upstairs with a screwdriver after having just fixed the electrical panel box, and the detective accused him of assaulting him. I defended him at trial, and he was found not guilty. In addition to that, I've been a defense attorney for the military. I spent a year on active duty as a defense attorney, basically like a federal public defender, but for the Army. In addition to that, I was a defense attorney here in Los Angeles in private practice. I represented a young lady who was molested by her father and charged with murder in Riverside. After trial, she was found guilty and it was reduced to voluntary manslaughter. That's some examples of cases that I've actually litigated. I've also been a prosecutor. For example, here in Los Angeles, an example of a case that I prosecuted here in Los Angeles, I prosecuted a gentleman that impregnated his 14-year-old daughter and who molested 2 other young ladies. He was found guilty after trial. I have a wealth of experience. The LA County Bar Association has looked at my litigation experience and also my experience as an adjunct professor. I've taught first-year criminal law to over 70 students. I've taught First Amendment.
Thank you. Time is up.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. And now we'll go back to Mayana for 1 additional minute if she'd like. Okay. Mayana, if you'd like to use your extra minute, you can. If not,
Hang on just a second. She's coming up here because her thing is frozen or something. It looks like.
hey, look, we got a special cameo.
Sorry about that, folks. My computer froze. So what's going on here? Is it my turn? My turn. Okay. So I'm again your best bet for office. Let's not keep repeating the mistakes of the past that we need to change right now. And no amount of backpedaling and explaining can explain the fact that we don't need DAs to, we need DAs to do their job, and that is to prosecute some of all those police brutality cases. I am your independent candidate here. I'm supported by large organizations wanting to see lasting change from the bottom up. And I didn't hear what was just said, but my guess would be that the LACBA issue is big also. If it isn't, then that's just a club too. So anyway, you should vote for me. I'm demonstrably, you could see my qualifications online and all the materials I have sent you as well. You need an independent candidate. The government here is tripartite. We need 3 separate different branches of the government. There's around half of the judges come from prosecutorial backgrounds. I'm independent, I'm experienced, and I'm balanced, and we need to see some change in that respect. So vote for me. Hey, thanks folks.
Thank you. And now,
Thank you. Time is up.
okay, now we'll go to Stephen, and Stephen, I know you have a special guest coming halfway through. So Peter, can you just say 30 seconds as well? Okay, go ahead, Stephen.
Thank you. Yeah, so, yeah, I was actually, I just wanted to say this quickly. I was rated well qualified by the LA County Bar Association. I've been endorsed by the LA Times, the LA Sentinel, the Met News, the Los Angeles County Democratic Party, the Antelope Valley Progressive Democrats, and Stonewall. So I would just ask for your support. Both of us have been considered many times by a lot of different folks, and I've received the support. So I would be honored if I would receive your support.
30 seconds. 30
Thank
seconds.
you.
Hello, everyone. Many of you know me. My name is Derek Devermont. I'm on the board of the Santa Monica Democratic Club. I sit on the Los Angeles County Democratic Party Judicial Endorsement Committee, and I am an elected member of the DNC. As many of you know, I am also a criminal defense attorney, and I know Steve Morgan. Steve Morgan's reputation is known as ethical, honest, informed, and compassionate. He is exactly what I think you would want on the bench. He knows when it's time to punish, and he knows and he uses
Time.
discretion.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so thanks for coming to both candidates, and we'll have the opportunity to vote in just a bit. And right now, I just heard from one of our candidates that the Zoom has maxed out participants. So we're now streaming live on YouTube. So if anybody can't get in, or if you hear of anybody that can't get in, I'm looking at it right now. Wow. So I'm going to post it in the chat. Vote in just a bit. And right now, I just heard from one of our candidates that the Zoom has maxed out participants. Okay. So we're now streaming live on YouTube. So if anybody can't get in, still live on YouTube. Okay. All right. That was a little crazy. I heard myself speaking there. Okay, so we're on YouTube. Send out the link. If anybody wants to watch it, that's the best way to go because we're at max capacity. Hopefully none of the candidates are going to be blocked from coming. We'll figure that out. Okay, so let's move on. We're going to have our next speaker, and that is on Measure Prop 16. And to present on Prop 16, we have from our Diversity and Inclusion Committee, Raina Kirkland.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Can you guys hear me
How
okay?
much time? Hold it.
Oh,
How much time, John?
3 minutes, Peter.
3 minutes. Okay, thank you. All right, begin.
okay, great. Can everybody hear me okay? Cool. So yes, my name's Raina Kirkland. Thank you, John and Dem Club, for allowing me to speak on Proposition 16. Democrats are voting yes on Proposition 16. Ted Lieu, Dianne Weinstein, Karen Bass, Kamala Harris are just a few of the majority Democratic supporters. This proposition would repeal the 1996 Proposition 209 amendment, which stated that discrimination and preferential treatment were prohibited in public employment, public education, and public contracting on account of a person's race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin. Consequently, Proposition 209 banned the use of affirmative action based on sex or race in California. What makes Proposition 209 different and harmful is that outside of its language of anti-discrimination, it uses the term no preferential treatment, therefore denying consideration of sex or race in public education, employment, and contracting. This would be understandable if we lived in a country where fairness already existed on behalf of sex and race. On the contrary, women make 73% to the dollar of their male counterparts, and minority women make even less, hovering at 62%. These types of unjustifiable wage gaps will continue to exist if we don't vote yes on Prop 16. The LA Times recently published an article, quote, "We wish that everyone had an equal opportunity to access quality education and achieve economic prosperity, but they didn't in 1996 and still don't in 2020. So, I mean, affirmative action, it simply means making positive steps towards the increase of representation of women and minorities in areas of employment, education, and culture from which they have been historically excluded. Example, 400 years of slavery and 100 years of suffrage movement. It simply takes into consideration the unique needs of the historically disadvantaged. Affirmative action isn't asking for a favor, it's asking for what's fair and just, for what ultimately benefits society at large by proactively welcoming diverse perspectives and fair opportunities. It factors in the voices of those who have been and continue to be excluded. There are no direct fiscal effects with a yes vote on Prop 16 because it doesn't require changes to current policies or programs. It just requires sensitive consideration, costing us Californians nothing more than compassion. Our country is at a reckoning of civil rights, and in the words of Martin Luther King, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. 60 years later, as a nation, we are faced with a strident opportunity to acknowledge and rectify injustices. A yes on Prop 16 helps us do that.
Thank you so much, Raina. That was great. And now we have Janine Bush, our VP of Programs, is going to be reading the no side, the no argument. I think. Janine?
I'm unmuted now. Okay. Thank you, John. And we wanted to make sure that the club got to hear both positions on the ballot measures, and we do not have a speaker. So I'm going to tell you the no argument on Proposition 16. Opponents of Proposition 16 primarily cite the divisive, discriminatory, and constitutionally questionable nature of Proposition 16, as well as the positive results Proposition 209 has yielded for underrepresented students at California's public universities since its implementation. They also point out to deeper socioeconomic issues that must be addressed to achieve better outcomes for underrepresented minorities, improving public school outcomes and options for underrepresented minorities in public K-12 education, inefficient public education spending, unequal access, lack of parental involvement, community segregation, and a shortage of qualified teachers. Under Proposition 209, California universities and government hiring may still consider economic background in the admissions process, but may not use race. Finally, Proposition 16 opponents believe that Proposition 16 is not a true affirmative action program, but is aimed at legalizing discrimination in government-sanctioned racial favoritism.
All right. Thanks, Janine. Appreciate you reading that argument. And now let's move on to the next issue. So again, we'll be voting on that one at the end of the meeting. Okay, so our next item will be Measure AB, and we'll be hearing from council. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry.
You have to recuse, John.
Yeah, I'm recused right now from this item because I actually was part of the ballot part of the ballot argument. So I'm going to.
Doesn't Michael need to recuse too?
Yeah, so Mike and I are going to recuse, and Tommy will take it from here.
All right, folks, I'm going to join in. This is Tommy Peturo, VP of Santa Monica Democratic Club. So I'm here. I'm going to introduce Councilmember Sue Himmelrich to present Measure AB. There you go, Sue.
Thanks, Dami. And Raina put me to shame. I'm not going to be half as good as she was, so you'll have to put up with me. But if any of you watched the meeting last night, as we dealt with our race and equity issues, a frequent theme among our employees' remarks was that we needed to get rid of the rule of three. And that's what this proposition is about. AB doesn't get rid of the rule of three now. It moves it from the charter to the municipal code so that we can make modifications to it in a way that will increase equity in our city. The rule of three was adopted by the Obama administration, by the state of California. Abolition of the rule of three happened in the Obama administration, in our state government. It is a best practice in hiring in order to increase diversity in your workforce. And I just want to say that we've been working on this. And for those of you who don't know me, I work at Western Center on Law and Poverty. We've been working on equity, justice, and race issues pretty hard for the last 4 or 5 years, and we aren't even close. But I do want to say that I think it's becoming obvious to everybody that diversity makes for better group decision making and for more balance in the ability to make decisions. So I really encourage you and ask for your vote on Proposition AB. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we asked the opposing side to present, and nobody came. I don't know if there's anybody here who would like to present. They said that this meeting might be biased, but I want to make sure to know that we are not biased. We do want to hear the other opinions. So if anybody wants to speak up, please do. All right. If nobody does, then we will move on to the next item on the agenda. John, I guess you can return.
Great, thanks so much. And Sue, there's some questions in the chat. Take a look at them.
Michael says I'm never clear enough about what I'm talking about, and obviously that's true.
Maybe you can just reply to them in the chat as we move on. And
but Ted answered. Thank you, Ted.
Right. Okay. Oh, good. Ted answered it. Okay, great. So now we're going to move on to the final ballot measure of the evening, which is Proposition 22. And this is going to be fun. We've got people coming to speak, special guests from both sides on this one. So we're going to hear from both sides, and we're going to start with the yes position. And we have the senior coalition coordinator for Yes on 22, Kyle Griffith. And then presenting the no side will be the author of AB5, Lorena Gonzalez, Assemblywoman.
3 minutes again, John?
So Peter, this is going to be 2 minutes for each side.
Okay.
And after that, we will be hearing 1 minute for each side. Okay, so 2, 2, 1, 1. Kyle, take it away.
Thanks, John. Proposition 22 on California's November ballot is needed to save hundreds of thousands of jobs for app-based drivers and to preserve the app-based food delivery and rideshare services that millions now rely on. That's because drastic new legislation passed in Sacramento puts these services at risk of being shut down. At any one point in time, more than 1 million Californians choose to work as independent contractors with app-based rideshare, food, and grocery delivery platforms. In survey after survey, these drivers constantly express their desire to remain independent contractors. And that's because they have the flexibility and independence to pick when, where, and how long they work. forcing these drivers to be treated as an employee would potentially eliminate their ability to set their own hours, choose where they work, and would lead to negative impacts for consumers, like higher wait times or longer wait times, higher prices, and potentially the complete elimination of services in particular regions. Studies have also shown that forcing these companies to treat their drivers as employees could lead to the elimination of 80 to 90% of these app-based jobs. At a time when California is experiencing record high numbers of unemployment, we think that's a terrible idea. Proposition 22 seeks to balance the desire of drivers to remain independent contractors with providing them historic new earnings and benefits guarantees. Nearly 100,000 app-based drivers and nearly 100 organizations officially support Proposition 22 because it improves the quality of app-based work. It requires these platforms to provide drivers a minimum earnings guarantee, access to healthcare, occupational accident insurance for on-the-job injuries and illnesses, and additional protections against discrimination and harassment. For consumers, it also requires drivers to undergo additional safety training, implements background checks.
Time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle. Now we'll hear from Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez.
I just want to be clear. Proposition 22 is an effort by billion-dollar companies to spend $180 million to exempt themselves out of basic labor protections. They don't want to have to pay minimum wage. They don't want to have to pay overtime. They don't want to pay into our unemployment insurance fund. They don't want to pay the driver's Social Security, the 7.5% that every employer has to pay into Social Security and Medicare. They don't want to pay workers' compensation. They want to say none of this is our responsibility. If you're hired through an app, somehow that's different. That's what they want the future of work to be, and that should scare us all, that if you have enough money, if you're a billion-dollar corporation, you can set your own rules and exempt it out of things that we all rely on, and exempt out of a safety net that all workers have to rely on. They talk about surveys a lot, surveys of their workers. Can you imagine a boss asking their workers, do you like how things are? I wonder what's going to be said. And the way they asked it is, do you like the flexibility? Well, of course they like the flexibility, and that's always in the hands of the employer. Whether they're working as an independent contractor or as an employee, that flexibility is in the hands of Uber and Lyft. That doesn't change. Nothing in labor law changes that. They don't ask them, do you want to continue to be paying your own Social Security taxes? Do you want to remain under a minimum wage? Their wage floor, if you will, is actually a wage ceiling, and they don't want to pay people for wait time. That would be like saying, we're going to pay you, but only if you're a retail clerk, only when somebody's in line and you're checking them out. All that time you're standing there, you're not going to get paid. That's their new way of looking at how we pay individuals. And finally, I want to say this. If you're a small business owner and you're paying into the unemployment insurance fund, you know that it's underfunded, and you know that we just had to borrow money from the federal government in order to pay those benefits out, including to some of these app-based drivers. If this passes, that loan, when it becomes due, will be burdened on law-abiding companies. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorena. And now we're going to go back to Kyle for 1 minute to respond.
Did you smell that, John? Smelled like Lorena burned it down.
Come on, let's keep it neutral for right now, please. So Kyle, go ahead. You've got 1 minute.
Absolutely. And app-based work is the reason why we feel that independent contractor classifications is because is the appropriate employment classification for app-based drivers. It's because it's a unique kind of work. There's no other job where you're able to work for multiple competing companies at the same time, able to pick when you start, when you go on break, when you go on vacation. Prop 22 seeks to provide some additional protections for these drivers and higher pay that they are looking for, while also ensuring that they are continuing to choose how to work. We've heard from tens of thousands of drivers about why this model is for them. And I think that the coalition speaks for itself. It's bipartisan. It is supported by 100,000 drivers. And we sincerely hope that Santa Monica Dem Club will consider taking a yes position. I know it's unlikely, but I feel like I need to ask.
Thank you. And Lorena, go ahead.
Just a quick clarification on the law. It's the law in California that you can work for multiple companies, competing companies, and nobody can prevent you from doing so. That's how the law is written. So I just want to be clear. These additional protections, they've had 10 years to give their drivers this. They could have paid them more. They could have ensured that there's some sort of background check. They could have done all of this. They've chosen not to. And now they're suggesting that through this proposition, they will. What we do know, they're spending $180 million to not pay their workers minimum wage. That should shock us all, and that should disgust us all. I'll tell you this, the California Democratic Party has endorsed the no on Prop 22 position. Every major statewide elected official who's a Democrat has said no. Every presidential candidate in the Democratic field who ran for president has said no. Our presidential candidate, Joe Biden, is no on Prop 22. Our vice presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, is no on Prop 22. And I hope the Santa Monica Dems will, of course, I have confidence will do the right thing and also take no on 22 position. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much for coming. Really appreciate your time tonight. And now we're going to go on to the next item.